Are you tired of thinking about drinking, trying to control it, and ending up in the same loop? Welcome to the Feel Good Alcohol Free podcast, where high-achieving women learn how to step out of the stop-start cycle and build a life that feels calm, clear, and alcohol-free on purpose. I'm your host, Lindsay, accredited sober coach and former high-functioning drinker. After more than a decade of drinking every night while keeping up a big career and a life that looked fine from the outside, I rebuilt my identity from the inside out. Now I help women stop negotiating with themselves and trust their own decisions again. Isn't a podcast full of cliches or willpower pep talks. You're getting real conversations, lived experience coaching, and practical tools you can use inside your actual life, not perfect conditions. So take a breath. You're here because you're ready to feel good in your real life. So let's get started. Welcome back to the podcast today. I'm super excited because I have a guest for you today. Her name is Kerri Maher, and she is the USA Today bestselling author of several books. One of my favorites is the Paris Bookseller, and also The Girl in White Gloves, the Kennedy Debutante, and under the name Kerri Maher, This Is Not a Writing Manual, Notes for the Young Writer in the Real World. Kerri holds an MFA from Columbia University and lives with her daughter and her dog in a leafy suburb west of Boston, Massachusetts. Kerri has a new book coming out called Summer of Love, and this book really is an intergenerational tale and weaves in struggles with alcohol and these family dynamics. And I'm so excited to chat about that with you today, but also learn about Kerri's journey and sobriety and some of her point of views. It's been so nice to get to know Kerri because we have a lot in common. So I just know that she's perfect for you and you are going to love her. Let's start. I'm going to kick off this conversation. Hi, Kerri. I'm so glad that you're here, and I would love to have you introduce yourself and your work. Where are you from? What led you to start writing? And what's something that you're really into or excited about at the moment?
Those are a lot of questions. Well, first of all, Lindsay, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited. I've followed you on Instagram for a long time, so it's like a real honor to be here today. So thank you. Thank you for having me. So I'm Kerri Maher. I write historical fiction. I'm going to hold up my book. I'm going to do this a bunch of times. So this is Summer of Love, my 5th historical novel, which is coming out on July 7th. Day before my 51st birthday. I'm just not afraid to say it out loud. Okay, so that's exciting. I live currently in Massachusetts, and I have for almost 16 years. I moved up here when I was pregnant with my daughter, who's going to turn 16 in September. I know, it's shocking. Germane to Summer of Love, I was born and raised in California. So Summer of Love is my California novel. And Summer of Love is named for the 1967 Summer of Love in San Francisco. You know, the Haight-Ashbury, flower power, hippies, war protests, all the things. And concerts. I know. And really like the first outdoor festival concerts took place.
What a time that must have been to be alive.
So. Right? I know. And now we have, Sabrina Carpenter and Madonna at Coachella. Yeah. So I grew up in Northern California, not far from the San Francisco Bay Area. So I grew up where this novel takes place.
I love it. And I mean, we're going to get into your book, but this has been a delight for me to be reading in the evening. Like, I have just soaked it up. I love it so much. I also want to just say that I am a fellow Swiftie here, and I was thrilled to see that in your bio, sandwiched between sober and lefty, of course, because all three of these things describe me as well.
Yeah, so I know it's really hard to come up with those Instagram bios that have to be, I don't know, like 180 characters or something like that. So they have to be really short. And I'm like, what words really represent me?
I know.
Okay, that's it.
It's so funny. Like, I just want people to make sure that they feel safe here and that they connect with me.
Yes. So, yeah.
I think so. It's very powerful, right? I think. I'd never had I ever thought that I would identify as like in that way. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, so as I just mentioned, I have like a teenage daughter, right? And so we went to the Eras tour together. She was, a few years younger. And it was like we're both going to remember it forever. We also, I mean, partly because we went to the Rain show at Gillette Stadium, which was epic. And I would only do that.
Yeah.
It was intense. And the fact that she put on that, at the time it was like 3 hours and 15 minutes. The 3 hour and 15-minute show in the driving rain was like hard, and all of her people, right? Hardcore. She talked about how actually at one point that the stage and her shoes had been developed so that when they played stadiums in the rain, because they knew it was going to happen at some point, no one was
She didn't become a self-made billionaire by skipping shows just because of a little rain.
No. And her fans are dedicated enough to stand there and dance.
Exactly. Well, that's a whole other podcast episode.
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
Newest novel, Summer of Love, and it's when this episode airs is exactly when that will be released. I will be linking it in the show notes as well. And I have just been so happy, like I said, to have the chance to read this advanced copy, I guess, ahead of this conversation. And I'm wondering, can you give our listeners like just a little more overview of what it's about? Like, obviously it's from where you grew up, but let's hear it. What's the quick and dirty, I guess?
Every writer is supposed to have an elevator speech for their novels, and writers are actually notoriously bad at coming up with elevator speeches for their novels. And for some reason, this one is the worst for me. I don't know, like my previous novels, like I wrote one about the original Shakespeare and Company bookstore in the 20s. All the famous writers went there. That's an elevator speech. So for this one, it's a dual timeline novel. One storyline starts in 1967 with the Summer of Love in San Francisco. And the kind of stars of that timeline are these two sisters named Winnie and Miranda. Winnie has just graduated from UC Berkeley. She wants to be a poet. She moves to the city and she starts, writing for various newspapers and participating in the whole countercultural life of San Francisco at that time. Her much more responsible older sister Miranda is up the coast in Napa running the family vineyard, which she inherited from their father. It's a little bit of a spoiler. I'm just going to leave it at that. Miranda is like really dedicated to this family vision of creating California wine that rivals French wine. Because, in 1967, California wine was like Gallo jug wine was what people thought of it as. Like, ew, gross, like pink. This is just stuff you drink to get drunk or cook with. But it never actually was only that. There were always a couple of vineyards, and some of which survive today, like Beaulieu and the Christian Brothers, who were making quite good wine. It's in this late 60s into the 70s period where the California vineyard culture that we have come to know really came into being. So it was an exciting time to set a book in that part of the state. I did not grow up in Napa. I actually grew up right next door in the San Joaquin Valley, which is also very agricultural. And so I kind of brought my agricultural knowledge of California I transferred that to Napa a little bit. Okay, so but there's another timeline. There's the 2015 timeline in which Dawn, who's Miranda's daughter, is struggling with her alcohol use and doesn't want to tell her mother because it's like, how can I tell my mom who makes this wine that I can't even drink it, or I shouldn't be drinking it? And she reads a novel, this one of like a series of like young adult fantasy novels called the Vineland series. And the writer and the author of the Vineland series is famously anonymous. No one knows who this author is. So she reads it and goes, this writer knows something about my home. And so she embarks on this like quest to figure out who wrote these books.
So funny. So, I mean, I could relate to everything Dawn related for sure. And as I first started to meet Winnie, I was kind of like, who is this type B? Like, this person just lives, my gosh, I can't. And then I just fell in love with her. Every little bit more that I got to know, she's like me more than maybe I prejudged here. I put a little too much weight on some of her like whimsical behaviors or carefree behaviors, the irresponsible side. I couldn't relate to that. But then I was like,
Yeah.
I love you.
I'm so glad
for
that
sure, for
she
sure.
won you over. That's great. It is interesting because, you know, the three main female characters, and there are some like, you know, Dawn has this best friend named Audrey, who's also was so fun. She's sort of like a Drew Barrymore type, you know, friend. Like she was a famous 1980s child star, and she's sort of, unlike Drew Barrymore, she sort of has completely gone away from the public eye, and she's trying to find herself. And when the novel opens, she's been sober for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years at that point. And so she and Dawn have a lot of conversations, of some very contemporary conversations about sobriety and what it means to not drink and all that good stuff. And I think that's why, Lindsay, you know, I also identify a lot with Dawn. But it was interesting, like, as I was writing the book, I mean, I identified with all three of them, honestly. Like, all three of them are sort of different aspects of my personality in some ways. I think it's hard for a writer to write a character that they don't identify with at all. There has to be something in that character that resonates for you in order, at least this is my personal feeling about writing characters. There's got to be something that resonates for you, even if they're totally your opposite.
Yeah.
Even if they're a serial killer, you know, there's got to be something in them that you can relate to in order.
That's
to really
so
write them
interesting because I think the way I'm kind of interpreting what you're saying is you are creating one person and their entire identity based on one little piece of your own, almost.
Yes. Sometimes it doesn't go in that order necessarily. It's not like I start with the piece of my own. Sometimes it's not until I get to the end of the first draft that I realize the thing that I really have in common with this person. And that's part of the adventure and the sort of creative joy of writing a book. First drafts are hard. I'm not going to lie. Like they are hard to write. Like, it's not until I get to about 50,000 words that I can feel like I can finally take a breath and be like, okay, this is actually shaping up. So most contemporary novels are right around 90,000. Longer one could get up a little higher than like 100,000 words. So like the 50,000 word mark is like about halfway through. So in terms of word counts, I feel like I have to qualify it a little bit. Anyway, so that first draft is really the adventure draft, right? Where I'm figuring.
I have a question related to like the technical part of writing that's definitely not in what I wanted to talk about, but you really just struck a chord here. Did you write each woman's sort of story and then weave them together? Like as you were structurally writing the book and developing the characters?
Lindsay? Okay, I think that my intention was to write them like in the order in which they appear in the book. But gosh, the first draft was like several years ago now. Why? And this is like embarrassing that I can't completely remember. At some point, I didn't know. What I wound up having to do was I had to write the whole historical section all the way through. So it had that momentum. And then I wound up writing the whole Dawn 2015 section all the way through. And then I was able to figure out pretty easily how they fit together. Now, also, I would say in my revision process, which takes a long time, there's many, many drafts, some pieces moved around. Dawn changed a lot from that first draft, like really a lot. You know, so at every stage, at every major draft stage, I have readers. I've got great writer friends and reader friends who read my drafts and offer me comments. And so I use those comments to sort of get to the next level. And then at some point, my editor gets her hands on it and she gets to get it across the finish line.
Speaking of editors, Holly's a great one. Oh, that is so fascinating. I'm always so fascinated when I hear people talk about how when you mentioned like, oh, well, the first draft was several years ago, I immediately got stressed out.
Oh my gosh, Lindsay, publishing moves so slowly. When new people come into my life to like, get to know me in my writing career, they're like, it looks like I'm producing books quickly. It feels to me like it takes forever. And when people sort of get the backstage view, they realize that, I mean, from the point at which I actually turn in a draft to my editor, it's at least a year until that book sees publication. Usually more.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's before like the usually a year I've spent getting it into good shape.
So it's many years, and let's see. Yeah. So this one started roughly short after the pandemic.
Yeah, I got the green light to write it from my publisher, and I really started writing it in earnest in the summer of
great.
2023.
3 years later.
So,
awesome.
Yeah, here we are, 3 years
well,
later.
Let's get back into it then.
Yep.
So one of the major themes is this transformative power of storytelling, which is very deeply intertwined with the work that we do inside my coaching program, Feel Good AF, as well as here on the podcast. So one of my favorite sayings is shame dies when our stories are told. And as a professional storyteller, can you talk to me about how storytelling has played a role in your own life and what led you to start telling stories?
Yeah. Something we haven't really talked about directly is that I'm also a sober person. I've been sober for about 4.5 years at this point. Since I'm talking about it, I'll start there and then I'll rewind. As you say, storytelling is a huge part of, I think, every recovery program, community, modality that I even know of. Right? It's all based on telling our stories and listening to other people's stories also, right? So there's both. It's a listening and respectfully listening and not commenting, and then also telling as an act of service, right? So there's that. And so I've kind of been immersed in that world for about 5 years. I started going to some meetings before I had my last sort of day one, right? So, and I love that about. I feel like, sort of our generation of sober people have produced a lot of writers. Like there's a lot of writers among us. Holly Whitaker, Laura McCowan, there's just a lot.
Right.
And I don't think that's an accident. Yeah. So, and, there are also musical storytellers, right? That are also sober. Jason Isbell, and there's a bunch. So that's where I'm at now. And I wanted to build that. We've already talked about the fact that Dawn is, from the beginning of the book, struggling with her alcohol use. And there's a book within a book. There are these Vineland novels that are kind of woven throughout my novel, which already has multiple timelines. So I'm juggling a bunch of stories in my novel, which was really fun and challenging at times. I really wanted this book to be about, on some level, storytelling as like one of the primary themes of the book, and the ways in which storytelling can heal us.
Really, it does.
Right?
Yeah. The fact that there are so many people who are writing about their own journey to giving up alcohol, I don't think that I ever would have quit if I hadn't started, like, if I wasn't exposed to that.
Right. Correct. Exactly. It's a huge awareness raiser, and it makes you feel so much less alone. I think especially with drinking, because it's such an accepted drug. As Holly Whitaker has always said, it's the one drug you have to justify not taking if you decide to stop drinking. So many of us struggle in total silence, knowing at 2 a.m. when we get on that merry-go-round of self-recrimination that this is not good. Something is not right here. Until people like Holly and Laura and you and, so many of the other people I'm sure we mutually follow on Instagram and have read their books and listened to their podcasts, it would have been hard to like come forward and like,
for sure. I just randomly, former coworker shared a book with me. She said, I heard about this book. I think we should read it. And at first I was like, you're hilarious. I don't need that. Rebecca Weller, A Happier Hour. That was the first quit lit book I ever read.
Okay.
And I read it in like a day and a half. And I couldn't put it down. And I just thought, women are quitting drinking just because they feel like crap every day? Like, what? And obviously lots of other reasons too, but her book was a blueprint of my life, or a carbon copy of my life rather. Mm-hmm. And I just couldn't believe it. So Yes.
Yeah. So let me rewind about storytelling. So I am also obviously a professional writer. It took me a very long time to get a novel published. I wrote my first unfinished novel in 5th grade. I had been telling stories since I was 10. So a very long time. And, I did various kind of writing related things all through high school. And then I was a dedicated good student in college, and I didn't write very much fiction. But as soon as I graduated from college, I actually wrote and finished my first novel. Well, thank you. It felt like at 23 years old, it felt like a really big deal. And, I thought within a year I was going to be on Oprah and like all the things. And that's not the way it played out at all. But I just I like to always reference Dory from Finding Nemo at this point, just keep swimming, just keep writing. I just kept writing. There were enough breadcrumbs of small successes along the way to keep me on the path. That first novel, I did try to get an agent, like back in the days when we had to use self-addressed stamped envelopes. Lindsay, did you ever do any of that?
To submit something? Oh, to like get it back? Yes.
Yeah, to get it published, you had to submit the envelope in which the rejection letter was going to come.
At least stamps were a lot cheaper back then.
Yeah, well, right. But printing the book was not. So I'm very limited in how many like agents I could be sending it to. It was a whole thing. But at the time there was no alternative, and that's what everyone was doing in order to try and get published. It wasn't like we questioned how bad it was.
Man, walk into their office on a Monday morning with a stack of books and they got to pick.
Yeah. Also, here's the thing about agents. Although for writers, the submission process has gotten significantly easier because all we have to do is send an email and attach a document. For agents, horribly worse because it's so easy to submit. They get so many more than they did before. I feel bad.
They almost should keep the process a little bit more difficult. Who's actually going to take the time to package up their manuscript and stamp it and go to nobody, only serious people.
Yeah. Agents have just gotten super good at being able to tell from the email, the query, how serious the writer is, right? I think
they're like, this submission was written by ChatGPT, delete.
Between that first post-college novel and my first novel that actually sold, I wrote 5 unpublished novels. So I've been telling stories that didn't go anywhere, that are just sitting in my attic, as I like to say. But, no word is wasted. I always like to say this for any aspiring writers who might be out there listening. No word is wasted. I learned so much from every book I wrote, every book I rewrote, every book that was rejected. And I have no desire to go
That was going to be my next question.
Some of them 20 years ago or 15 years ago.
Sure. Well, that kind of leads me into the next question, is around your piece for the HuffPost, where you shared your own story of sobriety, of service there, and you get vulnerable and describing the very relatable journey that so many women listening are currently on, especially finding a method that works for you. Did you have any fears or worries about publishing that? Like, were you surprised by the response that you received?
I can't see all the comments that I've gotten online, but it seems like the comments have been pretty positive overall. When I shared it on Instagram and on Facebook, I got a lot of love from people, and no one expressed surprise exactly. I think a lot of people already knew. On Instagram, at least, I've been alluding to being sober and like posting my year dates and stuff like that for a while now. So people who have been paying attention, this wasn't like, I think, a huge piece of news. To tell the full story, it did feel vulnerable. And I'm glad that the timing of this has all worked out so that my daughter is 15 going on 16, because I'll tell you, when I first started putting sober in my Instagram bio, she was younger. She was maybe 12 and she did not like it. Because and I talk about this in the essay, not about her, but about the word sober in our culture equaling alcoholic, the word alcoholic, right? And I wasn't very good when she was 12 at explaining how I didn't actually feel like that word is very stigmatizing, and the cultural definition of alcoholic never fit me. But she just, tweens have very rigid thinking. So it was hard. Anyway, that was hard. So I'm glad that she has more frontal lobe on board. And I warned her. I had a whole conversation with her about this. And I was like, do you want to ask me any questions? And now she's like, oh, Mom, you're not the only sober mom.
Isn't it funny that I guess I can see how it would be shocking to see, why is that important that you put that in there? Or why are you calling yourself that? Yeah.
Right. I think she just didn't get it. And I think now she does get it. And she has never read any of my novels. but she did read that
quick
article.
skim. She was able to,
Yeah, so I think she was curious, and I've always left the door open to her asking questions, and so anytime she wants to ask questions.
Yeah, the women that I work with, they want so badly, the ones who have children, that's what they want, is to not be having this be what their kids see, is them drinking, coming home after work every day and drinking and going out, like whatever it is, always drinking too much. Because as kids, we don't want to see our parents sad. And if you're drinking or out of control, right, or any of the things that alcohol sort of leads to. And this idea of one of the things that I hear from women so much is like, my kids are turning 15, 16, 17, and they're out with the car at night. And I need to be alert, or I need to be able to pick them up. I need to be able to be relied on. And then for women who have younger kids, like, what if something happens to my kid in the middle of the night and I need to take this kid to the ER or something? And I've had a bottle or 2 bottles of wine. I mean, this is such a thing for mothers, and it's so powerful to be able to turn this around for your kids, and I'm really excited for you that you've done this.
Thank you. That thing about being able to pick her up at any time. It was funny when we were sort of coming like to blows about having this word in my Instagram bio, and I did actually take it out for a while. I don't remember exactly what she said. Like, what are my friends or what are their moms supposed to think? And I'm like, they're supposed to think that I'm the safest mom among them. I
love that.
Right? But I mean, she was too young to understand that at the time. I was glad that I articulated it for myself, because really I am, especially in terms of that like picking you up piece and all that stuff. I had a lot though, I mean, and this is also in that article, is that, sobriety ultimately is a mental health journey. It is not just about being dry. I agree. That is the least of it, really. Once we get over that sort of habitual, like reaching for the drink at the end of the day, or when we need to numb out or whatever, not that ever totally goes away, but once that mostly ebbs, it's all about the emotional sobriety. And that is a mental health journey. And I had a lot of work to do. Some of my sober friends and I say, being sober ruins you.
So true.
Because I'm like, if you're not out there doing your own quote unquote emotional sobriety, whether you're quote sober or not, I just don't care. Like, don't come back to me when you've had some therapy and gone to some
absolutely. I mean, it's like, I look at quitting drinking as just 2 parts. There's one part where you have to get really good at saying no to alcohol and not give a crap about what other people think about that. But then you have to deal with all the stuff that you've been setting aside. And that means being comfortable, being uncomfortable. You've got to chill in that shit. You just got to hang out there, and it's going to dissipate. But until you can do that, the urge is always going to be there because of that instant gratification. I'm thinking about all of the Quit Lit books that I love so much, as we've mentioned a handful, but most of them fall under that memoir genre. So what led you, I mean, you've written several novels. What led you to want to write a novel telling the stories of Miranda and Dawn?
So the how this novel came to be is kind of an interesting sort of story, I think. My previous historical novels that have been published were inspired by hearing about a real person or people. So my first novel is about this one of the Kennedy children named Kathleen Kennedy. So I learned about her by watching a PBS documentary. My next novel was about Grace Kelly, who's basically always been on my radar because my mom watched a ton of Hitchcock movies, and, she loved Grace Kelly. My third novel was about this woman, Sylvia Beach, who opened the original Shakespeare and Company bookstore. My fourth novel, so all those were real people novels, right? We might call them biographical fiction. My fourth novel was loosely based on a real group of women. So all the characters were fictional, but they were loosely based on this group called the Jane Collective that operated an underground women's health clinic in Chicago in the days before Roe. And so I took the idea of that group and I created a fictional cast of characters to tell my own story. But again, it was kind of inspired by hearing about the Jane Collective, right? With this book, I knew I had all these ideas swirling around in my head. I had California, I had sobriety, I had storytelling, I had a road trip. Although ultimately this novel did not really become a road trip novel. But in my original iteration of it, I thought it was going to be maybe I wanted to write a road trip novel. So I had all these things swirling around, and I didn't really have any characters, and I definitely didn't have a story. And I was really struggling. And I had other ideas that I'd kind of been pitching to my publisher, and they kept saying no. And I was like really feeling down. And a creative friend of mine was like, Kerri, have you ever done The Artist's Way? And I said, no, I've been avoiding, no, because and the reason I never did The Artist's Way was because I knew that the cornerstone of The Artist's Way was journaling. And I hate journaling. I mean, when you identify as a writer from the time you're 10 years old, everyone is going to give you beautiful journals for Christmas and your birthday that I would try to, and they would always wind up in the recycling bins. It was sad, they were beautiful, but I would fill maybe 1 or 2 pages or maybe 10 pages at the most, and that would be it. Or I would ignore it, or I would re-gift it. So I was like, okay, I'll do it. Because I was desperate. I commit to doing it's like a 12-week course in a book, The Artist's Way, for those of you who
No, but I have another friend on Instagram who is sober and a writer, and she has done it.
And Julia Cameron, who wrote it, who created it, is also sober. And so a lot of the underpinnings of her thinking and the way she structures the book have a clear sobriety foundation. And so that was fun. I started doing it. I started doing the morning pages. And you know what, Lindsay? In 2 months, I had the idea for this book.
So if you're feeling stuck.
It was like magic. It ultimately took me almost much longer than 12 weeks to do the whole course. I took some time off here and there, but I did wind up completing the whole course. And I don't do morning pages every single day anymore, but I always go back to them when I'm feeling stuck. And I try to do them sometimes here and there, even when I'm not stuck, just to sort of
Yes, I know. I have a love-hate relationship with journaling as well. And it was something that I always know I feel better, but I never know what to write. And so I just start writing whatever is on my mind.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. It doesn't matter what you write. I actually I got a couple of other writer friends to sort of do it with me. I think most of them petered out, but we all talked about how our morning pages were just
me too.
Training. Yeah. The morning pages have this taking out the trash quality to them. And Julia Cameron, I think the way she says it is, you have to get rid of that stuff to make way for the good stuff to arrive. So you have to put all that junk somewhere. And it does do that for me. And, I'm not always whining. Sometimes I, on purpose, use the morning pages to brainstorm about and that's also helpful. So I use it for a whole bunch of different ways.
Yes. For me, it's mostly whining as well. And I also like to really write down what I want to accomplish that day after I whine.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell the women in my group or the women that I work with. If you hate journaling, just write down in the morning what you want to do that day, not what you don't want to do. Never write, I don't want to drink or I'm not drinking tonight, because then that's a sure way that you're going to. So write down specifically what you want to accomplish. What will have been a successful day when your head hits the pillow at night? I love that. You know what? I'm going to give myself a little challenge to do a summer of morning pages.
Back.
Maybe I'll do that as a little challenge in my Instagram stories for my audience too. So that'll be fun. I will.
Tag me, because I'm actually sort of back to it a little bit. I'm not every single day, but yeah, tag me.
Okay, that sounds amazing. Yes. Okay. Oh, I love how things come together.
I know.
So,
right?
okay.
I know.
Why, we already touched on this a little bit, but why do you think it is so important to include stories of sobriety and recovery in different parts of culture and across genres and mediums?
Well, I think we've talked a little bit about this. It is enlightening for people I think it's enlightening for many categories of people, right? There are the people like us who read these articles and go,
yeah,
that's why we're reading it, right? We're reading it because we don't want to feel alone,
right,
and we need help and we need to feel less alone. So that's one kind of bucket of people, right, who reads. It's important for us to have that flagstone on our path, right? And then I think it's also really important, my agent said this a number of times, in my process of writing this book, and she read one or two drafts. She was like, everyone has someone in their family that is struggling with addiction. I don't know a single person who doesn't have someone in their family. I think that it is also an act of service for the other people in the family to understand what is going on with their brother, sister, cousin, aunt, uncle, parent, child, what might be going on in their minds. Because I think if you don't have this as your thing, I think you look at people who have it as their thing and it feels totally opaque. It's hard to understand what is going on. And that's real. I mean, there's plenty of other things in the world that I look at and I go, I just don't understand that. I would like someone to help me understand that. And in many ways, that is the project also of historical fiction, like as a category. We like excavate the past to illuminate things that might seem hard to understand. And especially writers of color who are writing about the experience of marginalized communities. It's really an opportunity to learn so much about people.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. And with alcohol, it's like there's almost an immediate signal to our brain to judge a person based on their and I wish I could really wrap my head around why that happened, but it's so frustrating.
I think it has a lot to do with marketing. And this isn't what my whole book is about, but this is in my novel, right? The marketing piece about how did California wine come to represent the good life? Like, we literally can't think about the good life without a bottle of wine on the table. It's hard to even imagine that photograph without the bottle of wine. I mean, we can because we do it all the time, right? But in popular culture,
it's a total glamorization of what it looks like to be celebrating.
Yes. I'm sure lots of influencers have written about this and posted about this, but I've actually only seen it once or twice, where you get a scene in a movie where the main character is just trashed and just behaving so badly. And it's not that the character has a problem with alcohol. They've had one night, they're trashed, and they feel like crap for about 5 minutes the next day. And by lunchtime, they're like, fine. And I'm like, no.
Right.
No. This character would feel bad for 2 days. And if the character is over the age of 40, I mean,
I know, that's what as soon as you said that, I was like, and forget it if they're our age. Like,
I mean, come on, people. That drives me crazy because sort of hand check the cost of drinking that much. But very few popular media, television shows, movies that I love really represent that.
Same. Accurately. Yeah, I know. It's total media culture, everything that we're exposed to. So back to California, known for wine. And we have our character struggling with alcohol, and she grows up on a vineyard. And I have clients who are like, Lindsay, I own a bar. I literally own a distillery. How do we combat this? How do you, somebody who it's literally part of your identity, change this part of your life? And so this thing is causing your character's struggle. Now, it feels like alcohol is everywhere, and we just touched on that. But what are your thoughts on normalizing living alcohol-free, particularly for somebody who may have this as part of their identity?
Yeah. So, I was actually just thinking about this the other day, and who I thought about was, I don't remember the name of the character, but Ted Danson's character on Cheers, who's a bartender, and he's sober for all the many seasons of the show. In fact, does he ever fall off the wagon?
I don't think so. Because
it's a core piece of his identity, right? He is serving alcohol to all those other characters, and he does not drink. I haven't watched that show since I was a kid, but that really made an impression on me, right? I'm so curious to know, the people in your community who have owned these distilleries and stuff. What have they done? Everyone's journey is different, but I think the way to normalize not drinking is doing exactly what you and I are doing, like spreading the word and just having parties without alcohol and just being loud about it. I'm never going to serve it ever. If people, and there have been times when I've been okay with other people bringing it to whatever the event is, but I'm never going to offer it. It's expensive and it's not something I'm going to enjoy. So the more I feel like the great thing about kind of our generation of sobriety is that there isn't the anonymous component of it is not so important. We have people like you who are really like so prominent on social media, and a lot of the other influencers whose names we've mentioned so far. I'm writing this novel. There's a woman, do you know Jessica Guerreri? She writes great contemporary novels where sobriety is a central theme, and she's sober. She's been sober for a long time. Yeah, she has a book coming out in May. It's her second novel called Both Can Be True. And her first book is called Between the Devil and the Great Blue Sea, The Deep Blue Sea. And that's great too. She and I are actually doing a few events together in California when my book comes out in July.
Fun. I'll check her out.
Definitely check her out. You said this earlier about how quit lit as a category is in general memoir, so it's nonfiction. But I think that in the coming, more novels are coming. Have you read The Road to Tender Hearts by Annie Hartnett? I don't think Annie is sober, but it has a strong sobriety recovery storyline, and it is a great book. I mean, the book, it did very well this past year. The paperback just came out, so she's like doing paperback tours. But she has this one character who's this sort of older guy who's really struggling with his drinking. And it is a road trip novel, people. So if you want to read a road trip novel, read The Road Trip.
Okay, I will. And we will, yeah. So I know that makes me really happy, actually, because one of the things that we talk a lot about within my clients and in my community is around, like, every time you open the door, alcohol is there. And women often come to me because their starting area of what they want to focus on, I don't want to drink at home alone anymore, or I don't want to drink every day after work. And I recognize that means I can't moderate, or they get to that point where they're trying to unravel the idea of even drinking on a special occasion. But what happens is it's not just drinking at home. It's no matter what you want to do, you are going to notice alcohol. I don't know about Massachusetts, but where I live in Vermont, you go into the drugstore and there's a big wine. It's a display of, I'm picking up my prescription, but the first thing I see is a wall of wine. Like, make it make sense.
I know. Yeah. I know. It's so true. In California, there are no blue laws. You can buy alcohol in any grocery store. It's all like hard liquor too, is in like the safe way. It's unavoidable in California. In Massachusetts actually has kind of old
package stores
still, and not every it's New Hampshire that has the package stores, right? Do they call them package stores in
I thought they did.
Maybe they do.
My brother, when I was young, we lived in Massachusetts for a while, and my brothers used to call it the packy.
Okay, so yes, there you go. But my local little grocery store can only have some that are chains, can only have some number of them selling alcohol, and it can only be beer and wine. But my little local grocery store, where I go a lot, because I can walk there if I want, I can't get anywhere in the grocery store without seeing the wine section. And that was hard for me in the beginning. I just put my blinders on. I just literally turned my head and looked at the floor and looked away. But now, like, I barely see it. It's like decor.
I know.
Almost.
I know bunnies around Easter time. Like, I don't.
Like that. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's something. It's like that. Right. And so, I forgot what the origin question here is, but yeah, we're saying the same thing. I mean, these are all ways of like not making it the center of your life. And, you know, you were also talking about moderation, and this is in my article that I wrote about how when I moved into this condo after my divorce, I was like determined to not drink in this condo. So I put a little sticky note on my refrigerator that said, "Clear eyes, full heart, can't lose," you know, from Coach Taylor in Friday Night Lights. I could not keep that promise to myself, because moderation is hell. It's worse than never. It's the worst. It takes up so much brain space for me to do it, and also I couldn't. I just couldn't do it. So it was a relief for me to step off that merry-go-round.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah. I know. I dream of a world where when somebody says, "Do you want to grab a drink?" that our brains don't immediately tie that to alcohol. Like, when I think about normalizing living alcohol free, that's the first thing that kind of comes up for me, because I have a core group of girlfriends where when I was still drinking, we used to go out many Wednesdays and for a Wednesday wind down right after work. As soon as the clock struck 5, it was like our 4 little bodies were heading right up the street to our favorite spot. And now it's like we still do that, but I don't drink. And sometimes they don't either.
Right.
And I just want to be able to go to happy hour and have everybody be like, oh yeah, no, I'm just getting a mocktail tonight.
Yep. Well, so I am seeing more and more restaurants offering really
excellent
mocktails. And I still love sitting at the bar and eating dinner and having an appetizer and a mocktail or a non-alcoholic beer at the bar. That's still my actual preference. I would rather do that
Me too.
At a table. So it does, and it doesn't bother me. And for some reason, that never bothered me, even in the early days. I don't know why that's true, but I don't know. I like sitting there. And I have a friend who sort of embarked on her sobriety journey at the same time. And she also likes to sit at bars and order mocktails. And she had a bartender once tell her that even though the tips are maybe a little bit less, that he preferred the non-drinkers because he could have a conversation with them. He could make them fun drinks and they wouldn't get stupid or become jerks. Right.
I love it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I want to be really conscious of time here. So I just have a couple more things. If there's women who are listening and they're feeling pulled to sharing their own story, what advice would you give them?
Listen first, get comfortable with it. And just take the time you need. No pressure. And then maybe think about it. Think about how much you've gotten out of hearing other people's stories and see if maybe you want to offer.
Yeah, it's just like returning the favor only to somebody else and paying it forward. And this element, I like how you said, think about it and listen, because I feel in my own journey, I didn't start sharing until I was about 2.5 years sober, I think.
Yeah, that's super
common. And I feel like it took me that long to even just find the language that I felt good about. Because like you, alcoholic certainly wasn't something that I ever identified as. And I don't use a lot of or any language that's kind of associated with that. Like relapse is another word that I really just stay away from.
Slip. I know a lot of those words are not, I don't love them.
I mean, I prefer slip over relapse, but maybe I need to be.
No, I get it.
I need to reevaluate maybe what I even call that. Like to me, it's just a bump in the road. It's part of getting there.
Yes, that's right. It's a bump in the road.
It's just part of what we have to go through to get there. So
that's right.
Oh my gosh, this has been so much fun. One last question. What is something that you're doing right now in your life that makes you feel good AF?
I feel like I should have a better answer for this. I think it's honestly in a morning pages groove right now. So my morning pages are making me feel good AF. Also, this is a little bit of a mom comment, but so my daughter is 15. She'll have a driver's license in a year. And I'm kind of acutely aware that the car time that we share together, those days are numbered. And I love it when she deigns to talk to me.
Yes.
Those are just beautiful, precious hours, moments, minutes in my day. So that makes me feel good AF too.
And you are present for those, percent dialed in, not thinking about, oh my gosh,
when am I going to get home to pour that glass?
Yeah. Oh, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much, Kerri. And
thank you so much for having me.
Yes, we are going to link your book in the show notes, but where can people find you?
I am very active on Instagram, Kerri Maher Writer, and I'm also on Substack. If you basically put my name into the Substack, I actually have 2 Substacks. I have Sandcastles with Kerri Maher, which is my author persona.
Okay.
But I am also, I'm not opening a can of worms, but I am also a parent coach. And so I have a Substack called The Well-Resourced Parent. So maybe someday, Lindsay, you and I can have another conversation about all that stuff.
And you're also just making me want to see if you want to be like a guest speaker at one of my group coaching calls for my community, because
I would love that.
Yeah, this would be amazing. They would love it. And I know they would have so many questions for you, and you would be perfect.
All right. Well, you just name the day.
Okay, awesome. We will link everything to find Kerri and to purchase her book in the show notes. I hope that you have a great week. Thank you for listening to the Feel Good Alcohol Free podcast. If this episode landed for you, it would mean a lot if you left a review or take a quick screenshot of it and share it on social media. That's how this show reaches more women who are ready to stop living in the drinking loop and start leading themselves with confidence again. I'm on a mission to change the way high-achieving women think about alcohol because you don't need more willpower or more rules around your drinking. You need real support, real tools, and the truth about what's actually possible for you. So keep showing up for yourself, keep telling the truth about what you want. And remember, the life you want isn't found in a glass or a bottle of wine. It's built in the decisions that you can stand behind, the ones that you feel really good about. My DMs are always open, and I can't wait to get to know you better. I will see you next week in the next episode.